Right, ladies and gentlemen, we will press on now. I'm conscious that the longer we spend dilly-dallying, the less time there'll be at the bar. So let's crack on. I was just saying to Dan with a bit of a wry smile, this session should really have been called the good, the bad, the ugly, and the opportunity. You can work out who's who. Yeah. Hands up for who thinks Dan is the ugly one. Oh! Okay. Well, great. We've got a wonderful opportunity now to talk to a panel of the great and good of our industry. I'll be moderator today, asking some questions which have been formulated by your committee. So just a brief introduction. You probably know most of the gentlemen on the stage, but for those who don't, Dan Brunton, closest to me, Managing Director of Brunton Business Publications, whose titles include International Paperboard Industry, Packaging Portal Newsletter, Folding Carton Industry, and for the North American market, Corrugated Today. So welcome and thanks, Dan. Andrew Large, next in line, known to us all, I'm sure. He's been at conference many times. Director General of the Confederation of Paper Industries, or the CPI, as is better known. And he's commonly, Andrew is a regular attendee, as I've mentioned, and a contributor to conference. So welcome, Andrew. Thank you very much. Poul-Erik Nielson, next along, seat number 3. Following 12 years as sales manager at Mondi Paper UK, he now heads up Paper Trading UK. He's effectively at the coalface as far as the paper market is concerned. So welcome, Poul-Erik, and thank you very much. And last but not least, Neil Osment, owner and managing director of Noah Prism, a managing consultancy and market research company. Neil set up following a long stint in the industry working for the likes of SCA, ASSI, Domain and Limpac. Neil is also a prominent member of the SPA committee. So welcome, Neil, and thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. So I will crack on with the first question. I'd like to direct this to Dan and Neil initially, if that's okay. Do the panel think that the shift in demand for corrugated packaging seen over the last 18 months represents A, a seismic shift and will remain, or B, was it a Brexit/COVID combined phenomena that will dissipate? Are there signs that there is a changing landscape in terms of print news specification or change of usage of corrugated? So who's going to go first?
Oh, okay. Tim, thanks for that. It's a really great place to start. I'm not going to talk on capacities because I'm going to hand that to Neil, but I think really for me the most noticeable thing that's happened in the last probably 24 months actually is the levels of investment that have been made in printing equipment, whether it's digital, whether it's high quality post-print. And we've heard quite a few of the speakers today talking about inside-outside printing. That for me is a really interesting area because when you look at what's happened in the North American market, I know that we've got some colleagues here from the States who would bear testament to this. We've seen a lot of the independent box makers in North America investing in machines that are printing both sides of the sheet in one pass. I find it a bit extraordinary that in the UK we haven't jumped on that as quickly. Traditionally, when we look at trends when it comes to technology, Europe seems to lead the charge. If you look back 6-7 years ago, the adoption of digital print was very aggressive here in Europe, and then the Americans slowly caught up. But I think on inside-outside printing, there is no doubt that the Americans seem to be leading the charge. And I think when you then look at also individual countries within Europe, the Germans doing an awful lot of inside-outside, and the UK, we're a little bit slow, and I'm not sure what the reason is behind that. So some of the trends that have come from post-COVID, obviously the rapid development in e-commerce. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to work that out. But I think the work that needs to be done moving forward is with the converters talking more and more to the brand owners about the possibilities that this inside and outside printing offers. Obviously, you've got the security aspect that you don't want all the colour on the outside of the box, but it's the unboxing experience. We've seen it take off on YouTube, the influencers on Instagram, etc. Videos dedicated to literally the unboxing experience. So I think that's probably one aspect that's here to stay. Shorter run lengths, for sure. So I think really if people are looking at those investment opportunities, I think printing is certainly going to be one of them.
Very
Neil.
good. Keep hold of the mic for a second because I need an answer. Seismic shift that will remain, or was it a Brexit COVID combination phenomenon that will dissipate?
It's going to remain.
Okay, very good. Neil, same question.
Well, if I'm a Remainer, then I must be the opposite of that. So seismic shift versus COVID Brexit. I for sure have predicted the market changing in the UK. I didn't anticipate the enormous change that's occurred. And the enormous change that's occurred has been because of e-commerce rapidly replacing what I could see was going to happen over the next 10 years. So I think what's happened in 1 year is what I was predicting will happen in 10 years. So there is a seismic shift, I would say. I think we're probably going to pare that back slightly. A few people I was talking to were saying that Christmas was horrendous last year because of this rapid jump. I don't think Christmas is going to be quite so horrendous, and I think eventually things will level out, but at a new level. And back to what I was saying about people like Boxway coming in, we need that because it'll be at a new level. So I would say it's towards the seismic.
Neil, if you could keep hold of the microphone as well, because you partially answered this question in your own presentation previously. Is the leap in demand restricted to the UK, or are our colleagues in Europe experiencing exactly the same phenomenon?
It's one of the things that I've been saying in these meetings has been the UK has been ahead in the last 4 years of output versus mainland Europe. And I see that continuing. I mean, the optimism and the enthusiasm of the Richard Noble saying, you know, and Boris Johnson, global UK. I do think that the UK leads. I do think we lead in all sorts of things within our industries. So I think that the UK will be ahead, but Europe is certainly experiencing it as well.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Anybody else on the panel want to make a comment on that question, or should we move on? We'll move on. Very good. Okay. Is the unreliable nature of paper supply to the UK a function of inadequate paper and fibre supply, or a broken supply chain impacted by border issues and a shortage of drivers? Perhaps the two gentlemen that haven't spoken might like to make a comment on this.
Two-thirds of paper used in the UK comes from the UK. Okay, so it is. I think we have to look at that context. I think that's very important to understand. There is an increase in the demand for paper. Paper mills are 24/7 operations, so we can't just turn them up. So when more is needed than is produced, we see a shortage. And I would take issue with that the paper industry is unreliable. And maybe how we see it, there's a larger, there was and still is a free capacity in corrugated, so you can churn out more, and the paper mills won't be able to keep up.
Okay, that's great. Andrew, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I mean, I think to my mind, it's a longer-term structural challenge. You have to bear in mind that the UK has been the world's largest net importer of paper for ever since I've been involved with CPI, which is at least 5 years. So we have a huge investment potential opportunity for new paper mills in the UK. We have the demand for the product, and we also have the recovered fibre supply here. The question is actually government energy policy that is making investment in paper mills unviable in the UK. People are investing in other parts of the world, and that then creates this global supply chain where we have far greater paper on the UK market than we manufacture, and so we have to export our recovered fibre to other countries, and we then re-import the boxes around the manufactured goods and also for further processing in the UK. So the solution to this problem is for government to realise that it needs to create the conditions for competitive investment in more containerboard capacity in the UK. And that will only come with resolution of the energy cost crisis. And we're seeing the energy cost crisis really take off at the moment.
Yeah, you did. I'll come to Paul in a second. I think he's got something to add to that. We spoke this morning and you said, please ask me about energy availability and price. You've had some conversations today. Anything you can share with us?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a hugely important issue, and it's actually important for everybody in this room in their own right, as energy users in your own processes, as well as for the paper sector, who are energy-intensive industries in the classical sense. But it's also, I think, really important for the customer base, because so much of UK corrugated production goes into particularly food and drink chain. And it is the food industry that is struggling, not just from the energy prices themselves, but from the Brexit import-export restrictions, from the driver challenges, and now from the CO2 challenge, which is in and of itself a subset of the energy challenge. And this is the so-called perfect storm of events. And I think the potential for economic disruption and impacts across the economy, widespread, is significant. And we've been lobbying government consistently over a number of weeks now. We know a lot of other people have been doing the same. I think they do genuinely take it seriously, but there is a global supply element to this, and so there's limits to what an individual national government can do.
Indeed, yeah. Paul, you had something to add?
Yeah, the new capacities which are coming on stream and have come on stream recently for paper were all planned prior to the pandemic. We have one new mill coming on stream in Schotten. UPM Schotten has been sold to a Turkish company called Aran Paper, Aran Holding. I represent them in the UK. We sell paper from Turkey here already. And that would, of course, help the UK. I don't think there's a concern about fiber supply, but it will take another 2 years at least before that mill comes on stream. The other new capacities which have been announced recently are Norske Skog in France, and that will also take about 2 years before that comes on stream. So it's a long game, and the changes, this seismic shift, of course, has been very, very fast, and it's hard for the paper industry to react that fast. It's impossible.
Yeah, it sort of leads into my next question. My next comment first was I can't remember a time when supply and demand seemed to be so out of kilter. Specifically in our sector, what is happening and what is being done to bring us closer to equilibrium? You've mentioned the Schotten plant, but there's got to be more than that. If we continue on this growth trajectory, we need more supply. So I don't know, Neil or any of the other gentlemen on the panel, do you have any comments to make?
I think, as Paul is indicating, there's capacity coming on board. But just have a think about this. This year, nearly 10% growth in the UK. Which paper mill has predicted that? None. So times that by what's happening in America. And as I said, I'm very excited to hear what Michael's saying. But the leap in usage of corrugated during the pandemic has been enormous. Nobody could have predicted that. So I think it's a case of the levelling out. And back to another thing about the supply chain being broken. I don't think it's broken. I mean, Suez Canal, that happened. Shortage of drivers in the UK, paperwork, Brexit, I've talked about it before. All those things are just noise in the system, and I think they'll even out. So there's two things. One is massive demand and just our supply chains being a bit disrupted because of not least people have been ill and away. So I think it'll keep up. Fibre, as I said, fibre is my concern. I know you said we're all right with fibre. I think fibre collection, so if you've got any money, invest it in Biffa and Veolia, because I think that's where the money's going to be invested over the next 10, 15, 20 years to make sure that we're even more efficient at collecting fibre.
Can I just add something? Just at a very practical level, Tim, I think when you're talking to an audience of sheep plant owners and operators here, the impact that you look at, they hear all these numbers about what's coming on stream, and you hear about millions of tons coming on. It's been going on for years. Every year at the beginning of the year, there's another 1 million tons of new capacity. There's machines that have been upgraded, paper machines, etc. What does it really mean to the sheep plants? And I think now is the time where plants that, as Andrew was talking about, you say, you've got plants that hadn't had investment for 20 years. What's the impact of that? Okay, new machinery, new systems, pre-feeders, software solutions, etc. where we're actually getting to a stage now where our mentality is almost first sheet saleable. Okay, none of this running it for 100 sheets just to get the colour up. You know, those are yesteryear. We've got to get out of that mentality, and I think now is the time where collectively you guys are doing well. You know, you're making money, and it's so encouraging to see. And I can look round here. There's quite a few of these plants that are investing, whether it's in digital print, whether it's in high quality post print. It doesn't matter. That to me is the sign that the industry has got something by the tail here. But it's how do you reduce waste within your own plant? That's something to consider.
Yeah, minimising waste. It's interesting, we've talked about fibre, we've talked about paper, we haven't specifically talked about sheet supply. I mean, Coreboard have brought on some relatively new capacity in the last 6-7 years. Prowell have clearly brought on their plant as well. Significant investments by the market leaders as well in sheet feeding, but there's still a shortage of corrugated sheetboard. We can all feel it. We know our lead times have gone out dramatically. Prices going north very, very quickly. Does the panel envisage any investment in significant sheet feeder capacity? Or does the integrated box sector have some spare capacity and the balance will move from sheet plants to integrated? Something has to give because demand cannot constantly outstrip supply. Otherwise, people will be forced to plastics and other packaging materials. So who's going to give us the best shot on that? I'm sure there are some things in the press about Shotton perhaps having a corrugated sheet feeder next to it, a milligator, if that's what we would call it. But please, gents, share what you know, or dream a bit, please.
I can't comment on Shotton. Demand cannot constantly, permanently outstrip supply, and I'm not sure it is. I mean, obviously, this is a big shift that has taken place. It's, in my opinion, a lot of it is deferred or delayed demand from 2020, and it's going to settle down. The last 4 or 5 corrugators in the UK were all sheet feeders. I think we have to look at the full picture. How much old sheet feeding capacity is now going into case makers at Board 24 and at D.S. Smith Brunton? That is sheet capacity that has, in effect, been taken out. But I think there is, in my opinion, plenty of sheet capacity. The sheet feeders, of course, have some restrictions of their own in the supply of paper. That may not always filter through to the sheet plants as a restriction, but it is a restriction. There are plenty of corrugators that have had to upgrade or not run a certain grade. In Germany in particular, I know many corrugators over the last year have had to stop, wait for paper. So paper is a big issue, and the availability of paper is a big issue, not to be confused with sheet capacity, in my opinion.
Yeah, very good. Neil, did you have something to add to that? Because it's very, very pertinent to the people in this room.
Sure.
Sheet supply.
So on sheet capacity, for those people that have invested in our sheet plant market report, you may remember this, but I remember that we were just about in balance when I wrote the report in November 19. So in March 2020, we had a major change, and I haven't yet looked at the figures, but I'm jolly sure, and the signs are there, we're out of balance. When we wrote the sheet plant report in 2014, the reason I wrote that is because people were saying, we're out of balance, I can't get sheet, people have gone bust. I'm trying to remember it wasn't Western, was it Western? Yeah, Western went bust. So significant capacity had been taken out of the UK market, and the evidence was there. What I'm seeing now in 2021 is significant capacity hasn't been added, but the demand has grown. So I think we're out of kilter at the moment, but it could come back, and our predictions were that because of Coreboard and Prowell, it would have come back. But I think, back to this seismic shift, and I will go away and have a look at the numbers, and for those people that invested in our report, I will send you, free of charge, an update. For those people that haven't bought it, don't forget to buy our sheet plant market report, the updated version. I'm jolly sure that without new capacity, the industry won't be able to keep up.
Would anybody else on the panel like to plug a product or anything for sale? Just to be fair and reasonable.
Quote Sheet Plant Association for 20% discount.
Okay.
I remember in '93,
yes.
sheet plants had a market share of about 33% by volume. by value it was 36. And I think the big deal for sheet plants is to make sure that they stay relevant and they add more value than just volume.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Andrew, do you have anything to add from a CPI perspective on those topics? I guess some of your members are involved in sheet feeding. Has anything come up at sort of council level about the inadequate amount of sheet that's available in the market at the moment?
Not specifically, if I'm honest. I mean, the bulk of the discussion has been on the global macroeconomic influences on particularly paper supply.
Yeah.
And I think also the challenges around recycling and recyclability. I mean, I'd like to sort of pull the conversation, if I may, towards the DEFRA consultations on extended producer responsibility, on consistency of collections, and also all the work that's being done on design for recyclability, the likely forthcoming national labelling scheme for recyclability that's mandated through EPR. And this really creates a huge opportunity, I think, for this industry to make sure that its products are recyclable, and we all know they are, but sometimes investments in UV inks and foiling and lamination and so on can cause that into question. So can we make sure that the products are 100% recyclable? Can we certify that? And so can we make the supply chain for recycling as slick and as swift as possible so that the maximum amount of fibre is getting returned back into that industry, and we're showing ourselves to be part of the circular economy, because the plastics fight back will come. Yeah. And we need to make sure that we're on the front foot so that we're always, to continue the metaphor, one step ahead.
Indeed. Indeed. Well, we're very fortunate to have these four very knowledgeable people on the stage. I'll give you an opportunity to perhaps ask a couple of questions of our panellists, if anybody has any. Otherwise, it's going to be grab them in the bar and hope that they're not distracted by what's in their hand. So please feel free to ask questions of our panellists if you have any.
We can also talk about the boy band reunion tour if you're interested.
So do we have any questions? Sorry, there's a question at the back there. Yes.
Bald zone.
Sorry, we have a question at the back. Please stay on script. Gents. It's a very good question. Are we being allocated because of mass demand everywhere, or are people actually managing to ring-fence volumes, the big brand owners and the larger companies? It's a very good question. Does anybody feel obliged to answer that?
It is a very good question, and I know I don't know enough to answer it, so I'll pass the mic.
I can't really comment on sheet specifically, but I know that in the UK we obviously have a very integrated market. 80% plus is probably, corrugated is probably integrated. In a market like Germany, where it's not so integrated, I know that independent mills are focusing more on independent customers because they are expecting their larger integrated customers to become more self-sufficient, and then they will be cut off. So they're now sort of getting the first kick in, and they're supporting their independent customers. It has a big impact on paper availability for some, and of course that will filter through in boxed sheet.
It's not small numbers that we see now, it's like 50%.
Yep.
Yeah, it does have an effect. There's a lot of people in this room who would dearly love to buy new conversion equipment. But if you can't get hold of the raw material to put through it, it puts the whole investment into question. Neil, do you have any comments or any evidence of the large brand owners actually managing to secure volume at the expense of a freer, more independent market?
Well, I made an indication of the largest user who flexed their muscle in Europe last Christmas. I remember working for a company known as Smurfit Kappa and taking our largest customer up to a Swedish mill, and they did a direct agreement, and that was back in 1995. So it's not unheard of for major consumers of paper material to do agreements, and in this time period, and as I say, Amazon have made another decision to move out of plastics, which they couldn't get a hold of, and have paper bags. So I'm not surprised to hear what you're saying about allocation potentially in 2022. I think just maybe think about the folding carton industry, that in June of this year, they were being told that the earliest that they could get new specifications was in 2022, and that was it. So I think different industries are managing a difficult situation in different ways. And I think, and Andrew referred to it, that our industry has grown hugely in the way it's respected by other brand owners. And so allocation is the approach that we have in this industry. I think it's about making sure that we clearly agree and get our agreements in place with our suppliers. One last thing which we haven't talked about in all of this is the demand for corrugated is high and the demand for fibre is high. But actually our customers are facing shortages. So we've heard about chicken. Chicken is in short supply in the world. So we hear about Nando's, we hear about Kentucky Fried Chicken. So we all go, oh gosh, that's good, no more fast food. But actually the implications are no more chicken, or not enough chicken. There will be shortages that our customers will experience. And as a result of that, they won't need cartons because they haven't got the raw material, and they won't need corrugated. So actually I think it's going to be very topsy-turvy, not just because we can't get fibre-based products, but actually our customers can't get products for themselves. So
that's very interesting. Yeah, Dan, you want to add to that?
Billy, not to answer your question, but I think if you look back at what's happened in the sheep feeding market over the last 10 years or so, there has been modifications to ways certain businesses have positioned their channel to market. And I think when you see how fast and how rapidly Prowell, for example, filled that new machine, they're a year ahead of where they thought they would be, and they're hitting buffers already. And I think if you then look and see what's potentially coming on the horizon, you look at the move from De Jong that they've done the deal with e-corrugated. They're also looking at the paper mill that they're buying from DS Smith. Put two and two together and try and work out what's coming. I also had the opportunity to interview Bjorn Schumacher not so long ago, and it's a very veiled undertone that the UK is certainly a market that they're interested in. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with those leading European family-owned businesses. You've got to remember, as Paul said, that Germany's different from the UK. We're dominated by the integrateds. Germany's not. They've got some really powerful family businesses that have made stakes in the UK. And you can't believe they do that just to run old equipment and old facilities. No, they'll be investing in their capacity. So although that doesn't answer your question, I think the future probably looks a little bit rosier than we think, but that obviously doesn't get you over the hump of Christmas.
No, it's interesting. Capacity doesn't come on stream overnight. There's quite a lead into it. So prepare yourselves for a winter of discontent, I think, and get your turkey orders in pretty smartish and your Christmas deliveries all sorted. And for goodness sake, get your children's presents sorted. Otherwise, you may be the most unpopular person on the planet. So can we thank our panelists very much? Very insightful and interesting discussion we've had there, which I'm sure will continue long into the night. So can we put our hands together and thank our panelists? Thank you.
Very good.